Thanks for listening to the Two Cat Kitchen podcast. Be sure to check out our website at twocatkitchen.net, featuring lots of additional content including videos, new songs by the Coconuts, and our blog posts. Coming soon, you can sign up for free as a member for exclusive access to our new video series, Song and a Snack. Thanks again, and now here's the podcast.
Two Cat Kitchen, it's time for us to pitch in and start another Two Cat show. Down at the Two Cat Kitchen, we're starting on a mission to put you in the culinary know. We've got the finest recipes you ever will find, guaranteed to show you all a mighty fine time here at the Two Cat Kitchen. Time for a new edition of the Culinary Two Cat Show. The Culinary Two Cat Show.
Welcome to the Two Cat Kitchen, a show that mixes musical mayhem with culinary calamity. Each episode features new songs, a brand new recipe, and a special musical guest. Today's guest is guitarist, singer, and songwriter Paul Colombino. Paul gives us some great insights into his many years spent writing, performing, and teaching music. And he reveals the secret to making a killer tomato sauce. We're going to start things off with one of Paul's songs. It's Kottke, right here on the Two Cat Kitchen. We're back at the Two Cat Kitchen, and we're here with our guest for this evening. It's Paul Colombino. Paul, thanks for joining us. So glad you could be here.
Great to be here.
Yeah, great. So we just heard a song of yours, Kottke. Could you tell us a little bit about it, how it came about?
Leo Kottke was one of my early influences on guitar, and I wrote this song with a lot of his stylistic choices in mind, and felt like, I owed him kind of a tribute because I got so much from listening to him and trying to copy the things that he did. So I wrote this song, and I entered it, in fact, in a contest, the International Acoustic Music Awards a couple of years ago, and it won first place in the instrumental category in that contest.
No kidding.
Yeah, so it was pretty cool thing.
Wow, international.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It was pretty exciting.
Great song, anyway, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, so, and Leo Kottke, he was was he like a Seattle guy? No.
Yeah, Tacoma, I think, was the record company they worked for, which is up near Seattle. But I think he was from somewhere in the middle part of the country. I want to say Minnesota, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe because of the label is what I was thinking. Anyway, well, that's great. Fantastic song. Thanks for sharing that with us. And tell us, what have you been up to lately, musically speaking?
Recently, a couple of months ago, I played at the New England Regional Folk Alliance, their conference in Albany, New York. I did a showcase set there that was really nice. Played for a bunch of other musicians from all over the country, really, and some people in the industry, some people from Nashville, and a few other people that do promotion and that sort of thing. So it was really a pretty cool gig. I really enjoyed doing it, and it was a great venue. It was at a hotel in Albany, and a really nice reception room, and great sound equipment and all that. So it was a lot of fun, and it was about maybe 300 people. So it was a nice, good turnout and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's like a yearly thing that they do. There's a Folk Alliance International is a kind of the umbrella society, and then there are different regional folk alliances throughout United States, and that's one of them. So it was pretty nice. Yeah.
So you're a folk guy.
Really. I mean, I kind of am sort of like a niche within a niche. I'm within the folk niche, and then I'm in the mostly instrumental category within the folk niche. So it's a small group, small group.
But you're dialed into the folk scene.
Absolutely, yeah. I always have been. That's always been my favorite stuff to listen to. I have a lot of varied tastes, but my first love was folk music, and it still is, even now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah. Well, thinking about that, tell us how you got started in music. Take us back to high school and
even before.
Even before, yeah.
I started playing when I was, I think, about 11 in elementary school, and I played for a couple of years. Just kind of taught myself, had a few lessons, and then mostly taught myself. And so by the time I got to junior high school, I'd been playing a couple of years. And in the 7th grade, they had this, what do they call it? A talent show, I guess, where, people got up and did different things. So I tried out for the talent show, got into the talent show, sang Mr. Tambourine Man in front of the whole school, all the 7th and 8th graders, and got a really incredibly nice ovation from everyone, and a curtain call, which was like the first time I ever played for anybody, and I'm getting a curtain call, and it's like, all right, I'm hooked. That was it. It was like, I'm hooked. I got to keep doing this. So
what'd you do for the curtain call?
I didn't do anything. I just went out and kind of looked around and sort of took an awkward bow and then left. Because I didn't know what to do. That was my first performance. So.
In middle school?
Yeah, 7th grade.
Wow, just to have the nerve at that age to be able to do something like that.
And I remember really distinctly, I was shaking like a leaf backstage, but the minute I started playing, it was like, that just all fell away. And I just totally forgot about it. Sang the song, was totally into the song for the 5 minutes that it took to sing it, and then it was like, oh, wow. Felt like, what's her name? You like me. You really like me.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, so, and what kind of, do you remember what kind of guitar you had back then? Or?
Then I think I had a harmony. I had a harmony guitar that I, at one point, sanded down and refinished with exterior house stain. So yeah, I think that's what I played at that.
Wow, that's fantastic. That was an acoustic guitar.
That was an acoustic guitar, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Then the next year I played with a friend of mine, two friends of mine, in the same show. And he had a harmony rocket that he played plugged in through a record player, an old record player, and he plugged it into the input in the record player and played it through that. And I played my harmony, and we had a guy that was a lead tambourine player that played too. So, and we sang some Beatles song. I can't remember what it was. And we went over well too as a group. We were called the Season's Breeze. So that was my second time around. And then in high school, I started playing. I'm trying to remember the sequence of events. I know that one of the first gigs that I had, not really professionally, but playing in a club, was, well, first of all, I played for my sister's wedding. I played a couple of songs at her wedding. And my father had hired a band of some friends of his that he worked with for the wedding, and they liked what I did, so they asked me to come and do a set on their break in the club that they were playing in. So I said, yeah, sure. I think I was 15 because I couldn't drive. So my mom and dad took me to this club, and we sat there and listened to these guys, and they were playing kind of like jazz standards, light jazz, and they played for 40 minutes or so. And then I came up and played about 15 minutes, did a set. And then this is true too. After I got done, they got back up there, and the drummer gets up and starts with a little brush thing. And then this woman walks out on stage and starts taking her clothes off. So I didn't realize this. I don't know if my father knew, but I'm sitting there with my mother and father watching a stripper at 15 years old. And it's like, oh my God, it was crazy. And my mother got incensed and walked out, but me and Dad kind of had a good father-son moment, I guess. But this is like, oh my God. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad. No, you can't make that stuff up. No. I asked my mother about it years later. I said, that really happened, right? I didn't just dream that. She said, no, that really happened. So that was that. And then from there, I started playing some clubs. I played at the, what was it called? The Mouthpiece in Providence, which was a folk club back in the 60s and 70s. I think maybe I was a sophomore in high school. And then I did a few more gigs in high school. They had a Letterman's Follies where I did that a few times. First year I played by myself there, I think. And then the second year I played with another woman named Nancy, and we sang and played together. I think we did something by Peter, Paul, and Mary, I think. And then when I got to my junior year, I met this woman, Glenn, she was from Great Britain, and she had just moved to the United States, and we started singing together, and we did, I think the junior year we played in that same show, the Letterman's Follies, and I remember us doing a show, we walked out on stage barefoot. We were real hippies, and we walked out on stage barefoot with candles, and we put the candles on the stage, and we sat on the stage cross-legged and played, I think, a Melanie song or something, and probably a couple of songs. So that was my start of working with groups, sort of, because that turned into a regular thing, a duo that we had. And then her boyfriend, who was a guitarist, joined us, and then we got a bass player that joined us. We had a band that was called Bacon Fat, and we played together for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years. We played together through the end of high school and a couple of years beyond. And, we kept that stuff up for a while and played for a few years. And so that, that took me to being about 18 or 19. And we continued to play, I think, till maybe we were around 20 or so. Glenn and I did different things with different people, had different things. And that was the point where we started writing music. She wrote a lot of music. I was writing some lyric songs at that point. I wrote a few songs back then. And we did okay. I played from the time I was 18 till I was, I think, about 10 years. So I was 28, and in different bands and different configurations. I'm trying to go through it historically. I guess one of the things that I did was I played with Glenn for maybe 3 years or so till I was about my low 20s, 22 or so. And then I went on my own and started playing by myself and started playing around New England a little bit more. I played a few places in Massachusetts and New Hampshire and Vermont. And then I did a couple of, I had a couple of nice warm-up gigs that I did. One of them for Aztec Two-Step when I was working for with an agent. And then Dave Van Ronk, Glenn and I did a warm-up for Dave Van Ronk. And that was really fun too, a little club in Connecticut he was playing at. So we did that. And that was, that was my living mostly for about 10 years after high school.
Wow.
Yeah. And then later on, I started playing with a band, maybe in my mid-20s to late 20s, called Coyote. It was a sort of a country rock band, Grateful Dead, Little Feat, Bonnie Raitt type of stuff. We had two women singers who were both really good. One a real bluesy singer, and the other with this just smooth as silk harmony voice. And she's still around. Judy Choice. Judy, what was her name back then? I can't remember her name back then, but Judy Choice. She's still around. She's still playing a lot. And Dawn was around too. She's in Florida now though. So that we did that for maybe 2 or 3 years, and that was a lot of fun. That was like yeehaw kind of bar stuff, that people would just go crazy for it. We played places like, the Narragansett Cafe and a couple of places up in Foster, Gloucester area. Mm-hmm. And that was a real good time band. That was a lot of fun to play.
Were you still playing acoustic with that?
I played a little bit of acoustic, but that's when I got into electric.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and started playing electric. I had a what did I have then? I had a Gibson of some kind. I think it was an L1. It looked like a Les Paul, a flat top Les Paul, but it sounded kind of like a Stratocaster. It was a 3 pickup, single coil pickups, and it sounded like a Stratocaster. So I kind of played it like that. And we did some, besides doing like Grateful Dead stuff, we did some Dire Straits, which was one of my favorite players, Mark Knopfler.
Yeah.
And, fit in with my fingerstyle stuff that I'd been doing for a long time anyway. So
wow.
I kind of gravitated into that for a long time. And then...
well, it's fantastic that you just you had always been playing music.
Yeah,
it probably didn't seem like you were so good at it and knew how to get gigs and stuff, and it didn't seem like a big deal probably, but I think it's a fantastic thing that you could do that. I didn't, I didn't become a star ever. I wanted to be, but I never was. But I got to make a living at it for a while, and I got to do it all the time, which was great. I mean, there were a lot of periods during that time when I was playing like maybe 4 nights a week, and playing during the day too. And that's one of the things that really starts to cement your ability to play and your confidence in playing. Is if you're doing 4 4-hour gigs a week, which we were doing back then, and then practicing during the day, that just everything that you just get better at doing. So you get really just competent and confident, so that you can just walk out there and say, oh yeah, I know how to do this. Even when you're standing in front of a group of people shaking, your knees are knocking together, but then your brain goes, oh yeah, you know how to do this. You've done it 3 times this week already. This is just another time. Yeah. Wow, so, that's incredible. Yeah. We're going to take a quick break here on the Two Cat Kitchen. We'll be right back.
All right.
We're back at the Two Cat Kitchen, and so Paul, I was wondering, so you had always been playing music and always been playing gigs, like you said, from pretty much middle school on.
Yeah.
How did your family and your parents, for example, feel about the fact that when you got out of high school, you kind of just went out and did music? Was that okay?
It was a little rocky. They weren't really. They were kind of expecting me to take the straight route like my brothers and sisters had before me. I was like the next to the youngest, and everyone had pretty much gone from high school to college to job. Kind of pretty much straight line route. But I just decided in high school I'd been playing so much and really had already gotten into playing gigs and playing out, playing clubs, that I just decided I didn't want that. I just wanted to play music. So, I did. I got a day job when I got out of high school, but I still was pursuing, musical stuff at night and trying to do that. So they kind of came around eventually. In fact, they came to see me a lot when I started playing clubs pretty regularly. They would come around and see me. So they were supportive. Not initially, maybe, but eventually they were.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. All right. So we were talking about your exploits in the 20s and so, and things you were doing pretty well. Sounded like different combinations, bands, solo work. I'm sure you were always doing solo work, right?
I was always doing a little bit of that. Yeah. And always playing like by myself when I would sit down with the guitar at home. I'd always do things that were just either things that I had written or just things that I liked playing that had nothing to do with the band or anything. Yeah. But yeah, when I got to be in my later 20s, I'd been married for a while, and it just, the financially, it wasn't working out so well. It was okay, but it was okay, well, I might want a few things more in my life. I might want to own a home. I might want to do these kind of things. So I need to figure out a way to financially do a little bit better. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I started taking some classes up at URI, just, individual classes. I took a philosophy class first, and then I decided to just take a music theory class, a beginning music theory class, and I really liked it. I just, once I started taking it, I was just really interested in that, they teach you about the nuts and bolts of music and how it works and why it works, and how to basically write music, how to read music, how to think musically, all those kinds of things. So once I did that, I just decided, you know what? I don't really know what I want to do with this, but I'm going to go and get a music degree. So I auditioned and got in as a guitarist and started taking classes. And while I was doing that, I was giving some lessons and still played, I think I was playing solo mostly then still. And then I also, I had a church gig for a while that I was playing in a church on Saturday nights and Sundays. And, playing and giving a lot of lessons, and right here in Wakefield at the old string instrument workshop. And so, I went to school. It took me 6 years to get through my degree, but I went to school and through school, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. So for a while I was a guitar major and decided that classical guitar really wasn't for me. So I didn't really want to put the kind of time into it that I needed to put into it. And then I started studying composition for a while, was a composition major for a semester or so. And really liked that, but once again, it was like, okay, but I don't really want to put all my time into this. And so I kind of gradually took an education course. And I had a teacher, oh gosh, I can't remember her name now, but the first professor that I had for education was just a spectacular teacher. And she was oriented towards elementary school, which was not something that I ever in my wildest dreams thought I would want to do. I mean, I was like, kids, I don't know if I want to work with kids, I'm used to playing in bars and stuff. But she had a way of putting this stuff out there and explaining how you teach kids that just stuck with me. I just was like, once I heard what she was doing and what could be done with young children, I just said, yeah, that's something I could definitely do that. That's a job that I could do. I knew it right away. So that's when I got into studying, music education, and I focused myself on elementary education, but my degree, I could have taught middle school or high school, but I really wanted to teach elementary school. And so I did that. I student taught with a teacher in South Kingstown named Roseanne Fuller, and she was a great, great mentor, and helped me get a job in South Kingstown. Eventually, I worked in Massachusetts for a couple of years after graduation, but then I got a job in South Kingstown and stayed there for 29 years. Wow. For 29 years. So all during this time, I was still playing music, but I was teaching kids. And one of the things that I kind of remember having a light bulb go off when I decided to start teaching school was that, my goal has always been to bring music to people. And this seemed like this is a way to bring music to people and exponentially spread it around. Like for instance, you give a song to a kid and that kid goes and sings it for 5 other kids, and you've got 25 kids that might do that, so do the math. It's too hard for me to do the math, but it's like spreading music all over the place. And what I found was kids really were receptive to my style of teaching. They really enjoyed music. I really focused on enjoyment of music and inspiration and not so much the nuts and bolts, not teaching from this is a quarter note, this is a half note format, but here, try this, take these mallets, play this xylophone, see what kind of sound you can come up with. And through like that kind of stuff, experimentation, and then turning into like a little bit more formal instruction on how to play the instruments and what to sing and how to fit things in, kids found themselves making real music, which was like really just terrific. You could see it in their eyes. They would just light up because they would recognize that, hey, I can do this, I can. And that was really cool. And what I liked about it was if I could ignite that spark in them, then it was up to them. Then they could take off with it if they wanted to. And if not, well, okay, not everybody's a musician, but at least you got a good experience in elementary school, and you can do it if you want to, So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, I imagine that a lot of music teachers come through traditional programs and they tend to play orchestral instruments. Mm-hmm. But you were a guitar player, and a folk guitar player, really, or folk and maybe Americana, a little bit of that. Did you kind of talk about that to the kids? Did you play guitar for them?
Oh, absolutely. That was my main instrument. I mean, when I was playing, I did mostly general music, which was, just a classroom full of kids, and you would sing some songs with them and try to teach them some concepts and some skills at playing and singing. But my main instrument was always the guitar. I played the piano too, enough to play, Twinkle Twinkle for elementary school kids and a few other things. I got okay at the piano, but not too great at it, but I could play it, well enough to play folk songs and stuff. So, piano and guitar, but I liked the guitar because I could cruise the room while I was playing. I wasn't locked behind the piano, and that was really big as far as keeping kids' interest and keeping them engaged, was being able to go around the room and be mobile so that kids would see, I'm paying attention to you, so pay some attention to me, It works really well for that sort of thing. So I actually found it to be really helpful for teaching that sort of format, which was fortunate because my piano skills, like I said, weren't great.
But I bet it was a great thing for the kids to have, because someone on guitar.
They enjoyed it.
As opposed to the grade before where they're playing piano or...
Yeah, they liked it. And in fact, we ended up somewhere along in the time that I was teaching, we ended up getting some guitars, having the school department buy some guitars, and I would do a little unit with the older children mostly on playing the guitar. And, I would teach them some basic things, maybe some 3-string chords or something like along those lines. Or sometimes I would tune the guitars to an open chord and just have them strum on the guitar while we sang a song. And they really enjoyed that. They were really psyched about that. And we also, got into buying some ukuleles for the kids too. So we had ukulele, units that we would do too. And it was a little bit easier for the younger kids to do because they're smaller and smaller hands and fewer strings, only 4 strings. So that was another thing. And they really did enjoy it. I had one student that she lives across the street from me actually, and she's going to school now for I think it's music engineering, and her father says, I blame you for this. she wants to be a musician, and it's all your fault. The first time she picked up that ukulele, she just was off to the races with that thing. I said, well, what are you going to do,
Wow, that's fantastic. It's great to think that you inspired someone like that. I'm sure you inspired a bunch of kids.
I feel pretty good about that. I think
Yeah.
I will see kids that'll come back to me, through in town and stuff, and they'll have good things to say about, I really enjoyed your class, or I'm still a musician.
Yeah.
A couple of people that I worked with that I was not, I'm not taking credit for them directly, but they did pretty well. They did really well. In fact, a couple of my students, and it feels really good to see somebody like that, take off and say, okay, maybe I had a small little part of that, and then, their talent took them the rest of the way, and their drive and hard work ethic, But it's good to be even a little part of that, I like that.
Wow, that's really fantastic. So, Paul, you have another song for us?
Yeah, it's a song called Winter Sky that I wrote really during the winter while I was, looking out the window and seeing the snowflakes fall down, and it just was kind of inspiring. And so I started out with a single little germ of a melody. And what I like to do when I write music is I like to take like just a little phrase, just maybe 2 or 3 notes, and use those as a basis for the rest of the melody. It's sort of like what Beethoven did, dun 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 dun, that piece of music, the Fifth Symphony, based on 4 notes, and he just stretches those out, does different things with them, and that's how I like to write. So what you do basically is you start with a phrase, and you maybe repeat it once, and then you might play it at a different pitch level, like instead of da 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 da, it goes da 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 da, things like that. You turn it upside down. You use the same rhythmic pattern, but you make the pitches go down. You invert them. You kind of play the pitches backwards, sort of. You play them over different chords, and it's this technique for writing that really makes a piece hold together. And if you listen to this song, you'll hear that happening. You'll hear that same motif going through the whole song, but in different formats. So you're hearing like different disguises, basically, of the same personality, And I really like writing that way. And the other part of it, the introduction, just came as a sort of, I started playing this chord, and I said, that really sounds like snowflakes. Let me expand on that. So I played on this chord and did this arpeggiation of a chord and drop down chord changes, and it just turned into this thing that sounded like, to me, like snowflakes falling down, and that's how I kind of put that song together. So
wow, that's really interesting. All right, well, let's check it out. Winter Sky, right here on the Two Cat Kitchen. We're back at the Two Cat Kitchen, and yeah, Paul, that was really a fascinating song. Interesting. Now that you described it, I really heard the way you put it together.
Yeah.
But I will say that, you know, yeah, you could hear the different variations on that phrase. But there's also an artistic side to it too. And that's where you put it together, and it really came out great. I mean, you had to have an artistic element to what you were doing and making the decisions of where to go and that's the real talent there.
Well, I you know, it's a combination of things, because it's funny because I have the technical background to, you know, theoretically and analytically go through how a piece is written, but when that's kind of the craft of it, I think, you know, like just the skill of putting things together. But the artistic stuff seems to just come out of nowhere, and it comes a lot of times when I'm in the middle of that craft part of it, where I'm thinking, okay, where could I go with this? Where's the next chord that I might want to go to? But maybe I want to do a key change here. And somehow in that process, something just kind of takes over sometimes. Yeah. And that's the kind of magical part of it that I think every musician really loves. It's sort of like, where did that come from? I don't even really know. There's parts of that song that I listen to now and I go, I have no idea where that came from. It's just, it came as part of that process.
Yeah, but you can't explain it, but you really know it's right.
But what I think for me, what happens is I can't reach out and grab that. I can't say, okay, I'm going to turn on that inspiration right now. But it seems to happen more often when I'm involved in the craft part of it, and just, you know, focusing on, okay, what's the chord? What's the rhythm? What do I want to do here? And then the inspiration will just happen when I'm experimenting and trying things and go, oh, I wasn't thinking of that, but woo, that might work. Yeah. Wow. So that's what I really like about it. Unfortunately, I wish I could just turn it on, but you can't. You just gotta let it happen.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. It's great to hear about that. All right. Well, you talked a bit about your teaching career, but now your teaching career is over. So what's happening now? Yeah.
Well, I during the probably maybe after teaching regularly for about maybe 8-10 years maybe, I started getting a little more comfortable with that job, so I started playing a little bit more again. And you know, for the first few years I just was all day, all night was working on music stuff for school, because I just, you know, just starting a new job, and I didn't really know, you know, I knew how to do it basically, but you know, when you're new at a job, it's just, there's so much to learn. So I spent a lot of time doing that. I went to a lot of sort of workshops and things like that to learn how to become a better teacher and stuff during that time, and took some courses and got a master's degree in education at that point. But you know, once I had gotten comfortable with teaching, I started playing more, and I started writing more. I got kind of inspired by seeing Peppino D'Agostino play right here in Wakefield. He's just a fabulous fingerstyle guitarist, and so I actually ended up buying a guitar that was a lot like his, that was really expensive, but I said, nope, gotta do it. And that kind of led me into starting to write some more fingerstyle guitar stuff. And so that was in probably the mid to late 90s I started doing that. And ever since then I've been doing that some. I did an album in the mid 90s called Everheart. And then I did another recording in probably the early 2000s that was instrumental covers of Christmas tunes that I called A Guitar for Christmas. And then I did a third recording with my friend Glenn from high school. We sang and played mostly cover tunes on an album that we called Once and Again. And then the last album that I did was called Hello Old Friend, and that was stuff that I wrote during the pandemic. A lot of it I wrote during the pandemic and recorded during the pandemic, which, you know, turned out to be kind of a mixed blessing for me, because, you know, I was stuck inside. That happened, the pandemic happened right after I like to say graduated from teaching, you know, and it was the year after, and it was sort of like, okay, well, what am I going to do? I can't go anywhere, I can't do anything. I'm going to stay home and I'm going to buy some recording equipment and I'm going to start recording. So that's what I did. I bought a bunch of equipment. I had some recording stuff and some things that I had done, but I upgraded everything. And I consulted with a few people, including Jack Kottke, who does, he's got a studio in West Greenwich, and another artist from North Kingstown who was a professional mixer and sound person, and worked for major record labels and stuff. And he came over to my house and helped me set up my stuff and gave me some pointers for how to mix and how to record things. So with that sort of being my sort of informal education, I started doing my own recording and came up with this album in about 2020 or 2021 that came out. And that's, to date, that was my last album. But that's what, I've been working on that and new stuff ever since. And I have new things that I'm ready to record, some of which I've recorded and some of which is unfinished, and looking forward to doing another album of some kind. I may do what we were talking about before, which is like, releasing a single every so often rather than doing a whole CD thing. But with that album, I did, I worked with a radio promoter who released it to folk radio around the country, and it got some airplay, and it was pretty nice.
Nice.
It was in the top 20 on the folk charts for a while. So
wow,
I was pretty excited about that.
Yeah,
and,
that's fantastic.
It didn't make any money out of it, of course, but that's never the goal. I always wish that I could make money out of it, but even so, it's just like, it's a labor of love, and someday maybe somebody will say, hey, here's $1 million. You never know. It could happen.
Could happen.
Yeah, it could happen.
All right. Well, that's fantastic. So it sounds like you're still keeping at it.
Still keeping at it. In fact, this last thing, I decided to collaborate with some people. So I've worked with a bass player on some of the songs, some of my instrumental songs, and my friend Glenn once again was doing some harmonies on a couple of songs, and we did one cover, I think, or maybe two, and then one of my vocal tunes, and then the bass player worked on a couple of my instrumental tunes with me. A really good bass player. He did a great job on a couple of tracks for me.
Nice.
So yeah, that was great. So that's what I think. The next one is going to be a combination of solo guitar and some collaboration with some other musicians.
Fantastic. Looking forward to hearing that. So we're going to do a complete about face now. And
all right.
One question we ask everybody here on the Two Cat Kitchen is, what is your earliest musical memory?
Yeah, well, I think, I'm not 100% sure this is a memory. It may be a memory of a story that they told me about. But I was actually born in New Jersey, and when I was 3 years old, we moved to Rhode Island. My father got a job in Rhode Island. So according to legend, I was 3 years old at the time when we were driving the 4 or 5 hour drive from New Jersey to Rhode Island. I had memorized one part of the song Way Down Upon a Swanee River that went, all the world is sad and dreary, everywhere I roam. And that was the only part I knew. So for 5 hours, I sang that over and over and over and over again, to the point where I guess I drove my family crazy. And I guess I was very theatrical about it, like I had a big glissando on, all the world is sad. At least that's what the family historians tell me, and I believe it's a real memory. So that was, so I guess I got a pretty early start.
Wow, that's a great memory. It kind of paved the way, I guess. So we're going to hear another song from you. This is one off that new album that you were talking about.
Yeah, that will be on the next album. Yeah.
What song are we going to do?
It's called Cold Moon, and that was kind of inspired by celestial event. Cold moon in December, I think, is when that happens. It's a full moon, one of the big moons, whatever they call those. That one's the cold one.
Excellent. All right, well, let's check it out. it's time for the recipe portion of our show. And Paul, you do a lot of cooking. But,
I do. Cooking's one of my favorite hobbies of things to do. I really enjoy doing it. I like the process of it. I like the way that when you put a meal together, how you have to time everything and get it all to come out at the same time. I really enjoy doing it. So
nice.
It's one of my favorite things to do.
Any words of wisdom for us here in the kitchen?
Well, I grew up like in an Italian family with a lot of Italian cooking, and so most of the people that I grew up with from New Jersey and the Northern Jersey Italians, they don't cook from recipes. They just kind of, a little of this, a little of that kind of cooking,
Okay.
So that's kind of how I cook. But I like to basically I can tell you about how I make a tomato sauce, for instance. I have a couple of different ways of doing it, but I usually I use a lot of garlic. I love olive oil, so I'll saute a little garlic in olive oil. Onions I'll use, mushrooms, and peppers, and I usually saute that stuff up a little bit. And then I'll add something like wine or something like that to kind of make a little bit of a broth sauce to it. And one of the ways that I like to make a tomato sauce is to make a light sort of Northern Italian type of sauce where I'll use fresh tomatoes, just fresh chopped tomatoes and broth, and I'll add that to the stuff that I've done with the garlic and that stuff. And then I'll add either usually a vegetable broth for me, or a chicken broth to that, and cook that down for an hour or two and let that really thicken. And I'm fond of using some sweetener in it to take a little bit of the acidity out. Not all Italian cooks like to do that, but personally I don't like to use white sugar. I usually use something like maple syrup. And another odd thing that I put into it sometimes is a little bit of soy sauce to give it a little bit of salty flavor, and I also like the kind of caramelly color and flavor it gives to it. So I do that, and then I'll usually put different spices in it. Sometimes fresh basil, sometimes fresh oregano and things like that. And then mostly for me, I like to cook it a long time, and I'll just add liquid to it as it starts to cook down if it gets too thick. And sometimes I'll add a little thickener, a cornmeal or not cornmeal, cornstarch, something like that to get it to thicken if I want a thicker sauce. But those are the kind of sauces I like. I like a sort of light, brothy type of sauce, not the real thick sauce all the time. And that leads the way into making eggplant parmesan or chicken parmesan or just pasta with sauce, and that's the way I cook. And a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and you taste it, and you try a little bit more of this and a little bit more of that, and that's kind of the stuff that I like to cook.
Did you mention the tomatoes, the sauce of the tomatoes?
The tomatoes, well, I like San Marzano tomatoes if I'm going to use canned tomatoes. They really do seem to make a difference. They're expensive, but they have a really deep red color, and they're sweeter than most canned tomatoes. But sometimes I use just fresh tomatoes and just chop them up and put them in with the broth and all of the garlic and olive oil and all that. The other thing that I like to do that I was reading somewhere, that a lot of Italian cooks like to have some kind of animal fat in it. And I don't usually use beef because I do eat some beef, but not much. So sometimes what I'll do is put butter in it to give it that sort of, it kind of smooths out the flavor of it, and also, cuts some of the acidity in it. So between that and a little bit of sweetener, it cuts down on that really acidic taste that some sauces can have, that I just prefer something that's a little smoother. So that's why I use those things. And that's generally how I cook. Little of this, little of that,
Wow, that was some great insight into coming up with a good tomato sauce. I'm going to definitely...
try some of that, because it's really, it's fun to experiment with. And I don't know if you've ever been to, I try to copy things that I've had in restaurants and then add my own touches to them. And I've been to a lot of restaurants that have that lighter tomato sauce, not the real thick, tomato pasty type of sauce, but more of a fresh tomato sauce. And I really like that. And garlic is just probably... I started realizing I had some kind of addiction problem with it when I started putting it on my cereal. It's not a good thing, not a good flavor combination.
Well, although you can't go wrong with garlic.
You really kind of can't.
Yeah. Anyway, well, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that with us. And again, and thanks so much for being a guest on the Two Cat Kitchen. Really appreciate it. It's been so great hearing about your career. You've had a super interesting music career.
Thank you. I think so.
Really interesting to hear about it. Now, if people are interested in hearing more of your music, how can they go about doing that?
I have a website. It's paulcolombino.com. Paul, I'll spell it for you later. paulcolombino.com.
Great. We'll put that in the show notes, so if people are interested, they can head there, and you have all your stuff.
Yeah, all of my stuff is there and available. And, you can go to any download site or streaming service. I'm on those too, most of the major streamings, and Apple Music and Amazon and those places too.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Great. All right, well, thanks again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rick.
That's all we have time for in this episode of the Two Cat Kitchen. We'd like to thank our musical guest, Paul Colombino. Be sure to join us next time right here on the Two Cat Kitchen.
The two